So we're going to go ahead and get started. So glad you guys are here. We might have some people jump in as we go on, but that's okay. They can always come back and watch the recording. So just to welcome you guys, my name is Kenishier Zeddy, and I am a host. I feel like I'm kind of all the things. So before jumping in, I'll give you a little bit about me. I started hosting in 2019, and my first time to ever use Airbnb was 2018 as a guest. And from that, we loved it. So we when we travel, we really don't stay in hotels anymore, and we're a bigger family as well. So it's really convenient, staying in a large enough place for all of us when we travel. And then, we became a host in 2019 when we bought a condo not far from where our house is. And it was that's a kind of a whole story in of itself. But the process of doing that allowed us to kind of jump in to the short-term rental market. The place was already being used as an Airbnb, so I essentially was able to get into a turnkey, as they say, situation. So I pretty much just jumped in and got to just kind of take over and learn as I go. And one of the things that I think really set me up for success was being able to lean on that property management company that I bought it from, as well as their best practices and standards and things like that. So that's kind of a bit about me. And we travel quite a bit, and so our Airbnbs or our short-term rentals really kind of help us to be able to do that, as well as our ministry as we move around. So that's me. Now I'm kind of curious about you, and since we have a couple of you, if you feel like it, I'd love for you to come off mute and tell me, where did you hear about hosting? What's the thing that interests you the most? Like, what question do you have the most that we could answer during this call? And it's whatever you kind of feel like sharing. We'll start with you, Clarice.
Hi.
Hi, tell us about you.
Yes. So I'm currently a host as well here in Dubai.
That's
And
amazing. How long have you been hosting?
so I started working in a holiday homes operator like 4 years ago. And now I'm setting up my own, which I started this month only to have my own holiday homes operator. So I want to know more about it for sure. I don't know anything, I need to know more about the industry and all.
So if you had one question, actually you have plenty, and we can, definitely talk about how I can answer those later. But let's just say for this call, if you could pick one that you really want to have answered, what would you pick?
Right now, how can I, more promote and have leads with the apartments and landlords?
Awesome. So are you wanting to do property management for other units as well?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So that is great answers. That it will help me keep that in mind. I'm going to make a note of that actually. And then while we do that, Allison, I'd love same questions for you.
Hi, let me put a video. I don't mind. So, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Well, my name is Alison Perdomo. I heard about you on community Airbnb. I think it was on Facebook. So I'm in the community because I have a cleaning business. I run a cleaning business since 3 years ago. I started by my own. Now I have people working. So we clean a lot of Airbnbs. And around, I think it was after COVID, I wanted the idea of having one by my own. And so I've been searching since this year, being a host and everything. Honestly, I'm not a host, but I'm very interested in to learn more about it. I know every state is different. I'm in Texas, so every state has its own, regulations, rules, and I really want to get into the legal stuff to know how to do things right, like correctly. I don't want to miss a step or miss something, so I really want to get into that more.
That's awesome. What part of Texas are you in?
I'm in Austin.
So we're in the same area. Definitely. We'll have to definitely connect.
I live in Rampart. but whenever people
Yeah, I know, me too. I said that too. Cedar Park / a bunch of places. We're kind of mobile, so we're in different places. But yes, the Austin area. Well, that's so interesting. I'm so glad you're here. I'm definitely going to want your contact information for the cleaning business. Actually, I have your email, but yes, maybe I'll reach out and get more information about your cleaning business, because that is a need for sure.
I know, especially in Airbnb.
Yes, that's like the biggest thing I hear from a lot of other people who are either clients or people I help are people who've been doing it even longer than me. Like the biggest trouble they find is, the cleaning, because they'll have someone and then something happens, or, so we always love meeting people, and the fact that you understand, because it's different, cleaning Airbnbs and, doing that's different than like a residential situation.
Yeah.
So when you understand that, that makes it amazing. So yes, I'm definitely going to want to connect on that as well.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Well, what is something, so if I could answer one thing, I mean, we're going to answer probably a lot of things, but let's say just the biggest thing that you would love answered first. What kind of is the burning question on your mind?
I would say, and since you two live in Austin, like, why do I have to have legally, like, what's the regulations I have to have in Austin? And I know every county is different, so I really want to get into how are the regulations, or what area is best, to start. Yeah. So,
right. That's a good question. Both of you have really good questions. Well, that's amazing. Well, then I am going to jump right in, and then you guys at the end we'll do questions. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So with that, and thanks so much for sharing. We'll jump into the first topic. So we're going to talk about kind of how to start an Airbnb, kind of the basics to doing that. And honestly, anybody can do it. So I love it when I hear someone's like seen it or been in one, and they're like, I'm really curious about doing one myself. And I feel like that's that little voice that's like saying, really dig in, because they have it set up to where I really believe anybody can do it with the right support and the right information. And that's what I encourage you guys with that. So essentially it's deciding how you're going to host, right? So you can either co-host, you can host with somebody else who kind of needs the support, which means you don't have to own or even be leasing a place. And then another way to do it is to lease. You can lease a place, meaning just as you would rent a house or an apartment or something like that, you can go in on renting or leasing a place, but with the permission of the owner that you are going to run it as a short-term or a nightly rental. And that's happening more and more these days. The other option is owning a place. So that place is yours. You can have a mortgage on it. That's fine. Or own it outright. Most people have mortgages on the places that they are renting out. And there's sometimes it's individually owned, or spouses, or even partnerships. I've seen people come in together as partners on property in order to kind of run it as an Airbnb. And what's interesting is oftentimes they don't rent it themselves. Sometimes they will hire a person to manage that property for them, which is when you get into the property management, which is what kind of Clarice was talking about. And that's a way to get started as well before you decide if you want to own your own or co-host your own. I actually met someone here in the Austin area who's a property manager, and it's neat. He does a lot of Airbnb. He's been doing it for a very long time, and he started very young. And he's still young, but he started really young at 18. His story is very interesting. But he used to kind of host himself, and then he changed it to where for him, his preference, he actually is co-host on probably like 20 or 30 properties in the area. And so he pretty much manages all of them and just kind of invoices the owners, since the owner's account is on Airbnb and not him, and they just list him. I have a couple of clients like that as well. And sometimes that can be easier than running it as a more traditional property management company, where those fall under your account, and they see you and your status, and you get the reviews, and then you send the money to the client at the end of the month. You do your closeout. So you can do all those things. There's programs and software and training to be able to do any of those things, whatever lights you up, right? And it's okay to start in one place and work up to another. Even one of the things I do is consulting, coaching on these kinds of things to figure out kind of what your path is. That's the cool thing. There's so much flexibility. You can design it however it works for you. And so essentially, once you figure out how you want to host, then it's a matter of making sure the place that you're hosting or co-hosting is ready to receive its guests, making sure you have that process in place. How's that guest going to check in? And one of the things I do is I think of myself as a guest. So if you've never stayed in an Airbnb, you can think of it as a hotel stay. It's very similar. When are they supposed to arrive? What do they do when they arrive? What are they going to find in there when they arrive? What do you want to provide? I'm a person who I love the guest experience. And so I do a lot of amenities, a lot of things. I think about the children. I think about all that. So we provide high chairs. We provide pack and plays. I'll provide robes and spas and things like that. A spa experience with a cute little like bathtub table with, where you can put your wine and bath bubbles and fancy shampoos and a full coffee setup. And so you can kind of think about, I put yourself in that position as you're walking in. How do you check in? Are you using a code? Are you using a key? Are you, when you get in there, what are you going to find? Are you going to have a welcome basket? Are you going to have a note? How many towels are you going to have? Are you near the water? Do you need to have beach towels? Do you want to have slippers? Just different things you can have to kind of, depending on where your place is and what's special about it. I have toys at one of our places, games, things for children and families to do together. So you can have those things in place in order to be able to make the stay very pleasant. How do you want to decorate? Personally, I think that, unless you just love to decorate, that's not really important. It's a matter of you making it something that means something to you. So for me, I'm not a big decorator. So there's not a whole lot on our walls. I'll find a picture here and there. And actually, a lot of times my stager and my housekeeping people who help me, like I always tell them, like, I'm open to ideas. If you love to shop or you have ideas, I'm telling them, like, grab it, that's fine, because that's not my strong suit. So we partner on our places. I believe it's a partnership. Anybody who helps me. And so I'm like, if you have ideas, I would totally receive the help. So that's kind of some ideas of what I've done, and it's worked really, really well. And so, deciding how you want to set up. So what's your cancellation policy? How many night minimums are you going to have? The cool thing is this can sound like it's very a lot, but for example, Airbnb, they have a kind of a setup. They call them wizards, but like a setup where it walks you step by step through the different things you want to have on there. And there's like a smaller version when you first get started. And before we're done here, I can give you guys my referral link. So if you're not already a host on Airbnb, if I send you my link, it'll connect you with me, and it's free for you. I can help you through that process. And so that's kind of one service that I offer that Airbnb, kind of, I work with them. And one thing I didn't mention as an about me is Airbnb brought me on as an ambassador. They call it the Ask a Superhost program. So I'm a Superhost ambassador. And so they'll assign me different future hosts to help them host. And some of them, I help them all the way to they host their first guest, and then we're pretty much done. Although some people will then have extra questions. That's one of the reasons why I started this program, is they want support after their first guest leaves. And so then we come up with some way where I either support them, whether that's through consulting, coaching, or co-hosting, or even property management. And so that's there so that they feel like they have somebody or something to go alongside them as they continue to learn and have better experiences. And so that's kind of a part of like all the different parameters. So you're going to set all these things up, and then you'll host your first guest, and then you'll communicate with them throughout their stay to make sure they've got everything they need, answer any questions they have, all of that good stuff. It's good to have a guest book or a manual in place to kind of, for them to see like what are the things to do in the area, who can they call up with whatever they need. The best day I feel like is this day where they really don't need to ask anything because you've already covered it. And so when you just check in, hey, do you need anything? Is everything good? And they're like, oh, we're settled in. So you check in with them a couple of times, depending on how long they're there. They usually really like that. And if you've done everything and it's like the best case scenario, they usually don't need anything. You don't hear anything. And then they check out. And so you got to figure out what your checkout process, and then you coordinate with your vendors, your housekeeping or your stager or maintenance or however else to make sure the place is up and ready to go for the next one. So that's kind of a very quick, start to finish with hosting your first guest. And and getting those things kind of ready to go. And then I kind of addressed this a little bit already. And you guys can see my screen, right?
Um,
Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as I already addressed this, can you start an Airbnb without owning property? Yes, you can. From just co-hosting someone else who owns to leasing something from somebody. And I have whole methods and things to help you with presentations and how to talk to landlords and owners about that. If this is something you want to do, if anything I'm mentioning is something you want to dig deeper in, I'll just ask you to reach out to me, email me, and I'll give you that information at the end, so that you can be able to dig deeper into whatever path or journey you kind of want to take. So yes, the answer to this is yes, and there are ways to do all of them, and I'm here to help if you need to. So we'll go back to that since I already kind of addressed it. This is a really good question I get all the time, and technically nothing. So Airbnb doesn't charge you on the front end to set up an account with them, and even to host your first guest. They don't charge you until the back end, meaning after your host is checked out and the money's been paid, Airbnb holds all that money. They take 3% from your room rate plus your cleaning fee and any pet fees or any other fees you have, and they send you the rest to your bank account. The guest, it's actually host friendly is what I call it. So if you've ever stayed in Airbnb, the guests tend to pay all of the more of the fees. Now there is an option where some hosts can take on that fee. It's new. I haven't really explored it yet, but I've seen it as a guest looking to stay. Some of the hosts will they'll pay the fees to take the fees off of the guest. So it is an option. I probably would suggest leaving it as is as you get started. But so as you get started, if you do it traditionally, it's only 3% after. So after the stay comes, so you're going to get your money plus 3%. So Airbnb doesn't have any startup costs, which is really nice. So outside of getting it on Airbnb, the cost would be whatever it is to set up your place. Now, if you're co-hosting for someone, then you probably aren't going to have any costs. If you already have a place that's already you're living in or whichever, and you have permission to host it, or it's your place and you want to host it, then it's just a matter of what do you want to have there. Usually if you're living there, all your basic stuff is going to be there, all the things you need to cook and all of that, and you just want to make sure you're stocked up on your toilet paper and your trash bags and your towels and things like that. And one of the things we did, we ended up hosting our primary home when we started traveling, and so the difference there is we did go and get more uniform linens, sheets and towels and things like that to put in there. But it wasn't a whole lot we needed to do because we already had our furniture in there. We already had our stuff. Kitchens was already fully stocked and things like that. And so ongoing costs would be just replenishing of those items, toilet paper, paper towels, the consumables that someone would use when they're at your place and they're staying. But I would say that it's not often. I mean, I buy my stuff bulk at Costco usually, or if you could do Sam's Club or any place that has a bulk buying, or Amazon, sometimes they'll do that as well. And maybe we're replenishing once a month or so. Occasionally you'll get that guest that runs off with the shampoo because it's fancy shampoo, but but it doesn't happen often enough for me to be really that bothered by it, which is really nice. I love providing fancy shampoos. I think it's neat. It's very small, but people notice it, when they're in the shampoo and they have that tea tree and they love that sensation. So so it works really well. VRBO, and I do know about a bit of cross platforms. I'm on both. They have an option where you can be very much like Airbnb, but they charge more. I think it's like 5%. And they may have even changed it a little bit now from when I first joined. But what I will say is if you go on VRBO, make sure you pay the upfront cost. So if you need to wait until your place is making money or you've made some money, I would do that, because in the long run, it's going to cost you more per listing. Because you're going to take more. Now, if you pay, I think last I checked, it was like $400 or almost $500 a month, not a month, I'm sorry, a year, a year. And then they only take the 3% out like Airbnb does. And so you're not having to pay 5% every listing because you're going to get busy. I mean, it's just people are traveling more and more these days. I can't speak to Dubai, but I would assume it's probably just as busy over there because I know there's a lot of travel that happens there. One day it's gonna, we're gonna travel there.
Hope to see you
um,
soon.
say it again.
I hope to see you soon.
Me too. We've been traveling. We just got to get across the oceans. But yes, and so that's kind of a bit of preliminary how much it costs. And the cool thing is technically, really, there's not a whole lot of startup costs, especially to get on these platforms, which is really nice. Because in old school and back in the day, when people had extra houses or rental houses or vacation houses, they had to go through a company because there was no way for them to market it. And that kind of goes a bit to your question, Clarice. Back then, they had to go to our travel agents, people who had access to be able to put these listings out there. And they had to take their cut, and the property manager takes their cut, and it gets the listings to where people who are traveling can find them. And then now you start getting booking sites showing up, and now Airbnb, which has totally revolutionized everything. Now everybody can essentially host a place, and Airbnb does your marketing for you. And so they put it out there. All you do is really cool. Like when I first started, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have a booking site or any of that. So I don't have a website. Actually, so now that we're doing more property management, we are going to do that. But when it was just me doing my own properties, all I did was Airbnb and VRBO. I didn't market it or anything like that outside of whatever they do. And I got my first booking within about, 3 or 4 days of going live. And what's really cool is now, and that was like 3 years ago. And so now when I help hosts, so a host might come on and they ask me questions, and then they'll publish their listing. And the listing goes live within about 24 hours. And I have seen most of them, and I mean in all over the country and in the ones that I've had in other countries, book within a day or two, like fast. So that's really encouraging, and it builds that confidence that, okay, my place is going to do okay. But most places book really fast as soon as they go up and they're live. So that is, and all you did was just put your listing up. You didn't have to do anything else. So that's really encouraging for a lot of people who are just getting started. So how much could you make? So the best way I explain this, and I get this question a lot too, is the way it is now, because as I'll put it this way. So we've been traveling since about 2018, pretty often. And when we would go to Airbnbs, it was a lot easier to find Airbnbs for, around $120, $130. Now, and like we said, we still travel. And I mean, this is not just the busy season. I mean, all year round, it's hard to find anything lower than $200 a night. And I mean, anywhere in the middle of nowhere. It's up there, and it's not like these huge places. It's just a basic 2-bedroom, even 3-bedroom places. Sometimes even apartments are still over $200 a night. So it's raising up quite a bit, and not just Austin. Like Austin's even more expensive sometimes, but this is even in more rural areas, or you're even finding that people are traveling there and paying that kind of money. So you can make, I'd say, on average, on the modest side, I'd say you'd probably make about your mortgage. And there usually is a pretty good, balance in there, or about twice, 2 to 3 times, depending on the season and where you're at and how you position it. And if you're you adjust your pricing and all of that good stuff, you can definitely make some very good money on it. And so a lot of us, like when we bought our condo, for example, we bought it specifically expecting the Airbnb to pay the mortgage. That was the plan, and it did. We were very blessed. I think there were only that first year, there was only maybe 2 months that we didn't break even, but we had so many good months, it balanced out. So for us, and this was our place in Lago Vista, so it's not far from Austin. And that place, January, February is pretty slow. It still did the weekends, but not as much the weekdays. But it was so busy the other parts of the year that it was that we balanced out for the year. So that was really, really encouraging for us, and that's kind of just what we've continued to see. Is even more so as people are traveling more. And people thought, COVID would slow it down. And for a minute there, everything did. but right when Memorial Day happened, 2020, I mean, we had probably the most crazy busy year. I mean, it stayed busy all through December, and that's not normal. We were making peak amounts through December. So I think no matter what's happening with inflation and costs going up and things like that, people are still traveling, especially now, because for a while there, they couldn't. You couldn't really move around. And so people are saying, life is short. We need to use our vacation. We need to travel. We're willing to invest in that, because it's only going to be a week or 2 weeks a year. So we're going to make sure that we take our time, or we're going to take our staycations in the cities nearby where we live. So that is definitely something I'm saying. But also too, and this is for either of you, if your place is in a residential community, or if it's more residential, less vacationy, you're going to get people who are traveling for work. You're going to get people who are getting remodels or work done to their house, and they live nearby. They just need a place to stay because they have a family, and they don't want to go in a hotel for like a week while their place is getting fixed. So there's also a lot of that that I'm seeing in our residential house. And that one, I have not seen it really be slow. Even though it's not really by any water, it's just a house in a neighborhood. We don't have a pool at that house, nothing really fancy. We decorated it okay inside, but this, nothing really, amenities as far as a pool or anything like that there. And people go there and they enjoy going there, and it's pretty close to Austin. It's in Cedar Park, so that it works really well. So then, this is kind of what we were talking about before a little bit, and I know Clarice, you had said you were interested in this as well, and as well as Allison did. So you can be so when you are running it, the way you can choose to do is do it yourself, right? DIY, right? You can do it yourself, or you can hire a property manager, which is a bit more traditional. That means somebody comes in, they list it under their account, they run it all. It's like passive income, mailbox money, right? So with the property manager, they just send you a check every month for all the things that you that your place made. And that model really works for people who really want to be hands off with their places. They have other things they want to focus on, other things that that they do, or maybe their strong suit, I should say strong suit, like their goal isn't really necessarily to run a bed and breakfast, right? They like the fact though of the passive income, so that they can fund or be able to invest in other things. And the cool thing is now this is not just for the real estate moguls or the people that we read about. Like anybody can do this now, which I think is amazing. Anybody can make really good money and use that to change their lives, reach the goals that they want to reach a lot sooner, use it as retirement. A lot of people say that this is how they retire. There's actually one of the people who owns a condo where our place is in Lago Vista. They're retired. They have, I think, 3 places, maybe 4. They have 2 there. They have 1 in Hawaii. They have, I think, 1 in Colorado. I know, right? And it's just like, that's our retirement. It pays our bills. And the cool thing is it's not like traditional retirement where there's just a set amount of money and then you have to live off that. This is money that keeps coming in for them. So they're essentially making a paycheck without having to work or depend on a set amount of money that could run out or change because of the market changing, right? And so I think it's a brilliant retirement plan for those who are thinking about making a part of that, making that a part of it. I'll stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you apply for a host, let's say that I want to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
In order to apply for a host, do they require anything like the platform of Airbnb? Like, what are the requirements?
There isn't any. That's the really cool thing about it. Like they really, the only thing for you to get started, they'll probably ask you like for your ID just to make sure you are who you are. So if you've ever stayed as a guest, they already kind of ask for that anyway, I think, to verify a government ID of some sort. So they verify who you are. And then when you want to host, they'll ask you for your tax information. So what that means is how you pay taxes, right? So you can use your social or whatever taxpayer number you have. Or if you want to start a business or you already have a business, you can use your your EIN. You can use that as well. But you don't have to necessarily put it under your business name. So for example, it's under my name, but under the tax information, I put my EIN. And I had already had that business before I even started doing this, doing event coordinating and things like that. So, and then so you'll need that. And then whatever you want to get paid, right? They'll want you to set up your bank information so that they know where to deposit the money that you make from all your various stays that stay at your place. So they make it very easy, which is really nice for you to get started. And as far as, and Airbnb collects the taxes for you and submits and pays it. VRBO only collects like half, but they'll tell you like they collect the taxes for you, send it to you, the half that you need to pay, and then you'll pay it as part of your sales taxes, hotel occupancy, like you would anything else on your how you pay your sales taxes.
Okay.
And stuff.
Okay.
But if you're just Airbnb, they take care of that. And as far as like, and we can go into that later as well, but as far as like permitting and things like that, Airbnb is not even concerned about that. So you can still start your listing, even though you might not have that situated. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying it's not related, right? They encourage you to make sure you know what's going on, but it's one of those, and I've heard people do that, like they didn't know, and then they might need to pay like a permit, a back permitting or back fees or whatever, if it wasn't collected. And so that is really helpful to know as well, like Airbnb, and that's still pretty separate. So you can get started pretty much in just having all that information and be verified and all that stuff, which makes it really, really easy.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing they require is like having photos, which you can get professional photos, but to get started, I probably should mention this before, you can just take some nice with your camera. That's what I tell a lot of clients. I'm like, just take them with your camera so we can get your listing live so you can start receiving guests. And then we actually do photography. I have a partner that does my professional photography and videography. And so then they'll usually, if we're local or we can get to them, hire us, and then we'll come into town or wherever they are, get those professional things. And then if I'm their co-host or something like that, I'll switch them out so that they have the more accurate photos on their listing.
Okay. Okay.
So that is that. And, oh, and so yes, good question, by the way, very good questions. And so the cool thing is if you hire a property, always says do it yourself, if you do it yourself was what your question was, but if you hire a property manager, they usually take care of all that stuff. Now zoning, and that's we'll talk about that later in a bit, but yeah, the property manager will usually know if your property is good, all that good stuff. And let me just say this so I don't forget. If you're gonna lease or buy a place, and even if the owner, let's say you're leasing, the owner says, yeah, you can Airbnb it, make sure that your zoning or whatever that is also says that it's okay. Because I just learned in the last year or so, because I've been in one area and I've been branching to other areas. And so there's one particular place I was at where they've split it down the middle, where one side is mainly Airbnbs, or they're zoned. You can have an Airbnb, and they made it to where you cannot on the other side. And I think it is divided by county. And I get the reason why, because that area is such a touristy area already. They want to make sure that locals or people who want to live there can afford to buy a home or lease a home.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so I see both sides. So I think they do have to keep the balance so that it's just not filled with rentals, vacation rentals that cost, $200 to almost $1,500 a night.
Yeah.
It goes up there over there.
And how do you
Go ahead.
how do you mostly know what zones? Like, is there like in a specific
Yes, I know what you're asking.
Right.
So what you can do is wherever you're planning on having your place, you want to go to the county and the city sites, and you want to even Google, zoning. So nightly rental, vacation rental, short-term rental. Those are the words you want to try to use, and look up zoning to see what the rules are. Now, if you're having a hard time finding it and you do it that way, then you could probably call a local property management company in that area and ask them to see kind of what the rules are in certain areas. They usually will stay pretty apprised of that. Property management companies, especially big ones that are local in an area, they'll know, like you can say, I'm thinking about being buying a place or leasing a place to rent out, and I not sure if I'm going to hire a company or not, but I'd love to know from your perspective, what are the areas that are successful, where is it allowed, things like that, because they're going to know usually. A good question as well. Clarice, how are you doing? Do you have any questions?
So far, so good.
Awesome. And keep them coming, especially since we're a small group, so definitely. So this is another question I got it today actually, is how can you manage remotely? And that's kind of how we started, because we pretty much bought the condo and then went and traveled, because we rented out our house as a long-term rental in order to be able to get the condo. And so what is the best way to do that is get your team in place. I call them boots on the ground. So, whoever's going to help you do your turnarounds, your cleans, maintenance people, who's going to restock your pantry or your items and your owner's closet, which I never covered that, but that's one of the steps to setting up your place is having a closet that you put a lock on, or a keypad lock is really easy. The more keypads you can use, the better, because if you're not there coordinating a key, there's ways to do it. They've been doing it for years, but now with these locks, you don't have to worry about getting a key in hand, although it helps to have spare keys somewhere that is accessible. But yes, the coded locks are the best things you can do, because one, when it's your guest, you can change the code remotely, so you can keep it kind of more secure. Two, like for example, we have on our owner's closet, it's like a doorknob with keypad on it. And so we have a code there for our housekeeping, and they'll come and I open that up. They have all the stock and extra linens and whatever else is there. And then they, close it. You probably know what I'm talking about, Allison, right? Like, have you seen a lot of yes. Okay, but yeah, so that's that. I highly recommend that, because I've been through the key thing. I was just dealing with it. I have a client right now. We have some issues coordinating keys. So it makes it so much easier. You don't have to worry about people locking themselves out, things like that.
Also for the cleaners, it's easier where they just put a key pad instead, sometimes a key, or sometimes it's raining and they're outside.
Yep.
Work.
So that's one big way to manage remotely, is having keypads, and once you can, have them on a network, and your thermostats as well, having that on a network, so that you can control them remotely is also a really good idea. So that way you can keep your temperatures. And I'll keep a monitor. This just happened to me yesterday. I happened to look at my thermostats, and they were set to like 70 or 71, but the temperature was 80 in the house. And so I'm not there, right? I'm in town, but I'm at the house. I'm like, oh no, the AC's not working. And I have a guest coming in at 4. So because if I didn't have that, if I didn't have that knowledge of that on my phone remotely, I would have had to hear about it when the guest showed up and said it's 80 degrees in here. Exactly. So thank God. So I happened to see it, and I was able to get an AC person out there who said, we can fix it, but not till next week. Sorry. So I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I actually was able to coordinate about 6 AC window units to get installed in there. And I called the guest and I said, hey, we had an AC issue come up, but we're fixing it, but the house may not be ready right at 4. And so give me till 5:30 max, but if it's done earlier, I'll let you know. So they could know to adjust their plans, not come to the house right away. And we got it in there by about 4:30, which is really cool. I found 4 people and they all put in the AC units for me, put in 6 AC units, and they did it within an hour, which is great. So that story is an example of why it's good to, one, have a property manager, because I'm kind of trained in this, but 2, also to have that remote setup so that you can keep eyes on the key systems, especially when you're in a place like Texas. That's a big one. And so one question, if you're in a place that's hot, one thing you might want to look at when you're looking into buying a place, and Clarice, this might also go for you, so you're kind of looking, or even if you're going to manage a place, I learned this the hard way. Ask them any key systems that may be an issue depending on your weather. you want to ask them about. So you want to say, you know, how is your AC? How is it maintenance? When was the last time it was changed? Who does your filters? Like you want to know kind of the quality of it, because I learned that the hard way when I took on a client, and like 2 weekends in a row, their AC was trouble. And, you know, the clients are, you know, messaging me and saying, you know, it's hot, or I'm, you know, and I had to, and it was a Saturday after 5. So that can be really rough to get technicians to come out to fix something. And so we were able to do, I had to do a lot of work, but we were able to get somebody out there to fix it. And I treated the guests to, you know, dinner and drinks while we were doing it. So they could go while we were getting it cooler and more comfortable for them. And that worked. But the next weekend, it was a problem again. So, but by then I did have some calls in place and someone who was willing to go out and fix it. So that was good. But had I known ahead of time, I would have prepared better, you know, had something in place so that the guests, it didn't have to get to the guests. That's kind of the ideal. And so that's a big one as well you want to know about, especially if you're going to be remote, especially if you can't get there quickly. You want to have people that can get there. So I have an assistant, I have someone who stages, I have extra people who help me clean or help me buy things. I have extra people who do maintenance. You know, I have, like, I'm very blessed. I'm very, very blessed. I also pray a lot over the places. I do, because there are things you just cannot plan for, right? But for me, in my experience, it has worked. Like where the condo's like, oh, sorry, we're gonna need to turn the water off for 2 hours, and it happens to be when a guest is not there. So, so it's definitely good to do what you can do for when these unexpected situations come, and also call your guests. That's a big one. People don't always expect it, but for me, if something is a bit more complex than the message through the platform, I'll also give them a call. So I'll message to the platform, because you want to have, you know, the documentation, so should anything go wrong, because they're not going to look at text messages, they're going to look at everything that's in your portal. So make sure you're always communicating there, but call them if you need to. So if something is complex or extra, like whenever the place wasn't going to be ready on time, like I call them, because, you know, it's something very personal when you hear someone's voice, and especially if you're good with people and good on the phone or good doing that, it helps to calm people, it helps them to trust you, it helps them to feel like you care about them, because you do, you know, and it's a lot more personal than just some text, right? It's easy to, oh, sorry, your place is going to be ready on time, in text. If that's not going to feel that great. But if someone calls, hey, I'm so sorry, what can I do? Can I treat you guys to dinner? You know, then it's a lot more easier to be understanding, you know, when you're talking to another person. So when you can use your voice and be involved, definitely do it. It helps people to just kind of personalize you as well. There are times where I never even hear from the person that's at the place, and don't need to call, but I think making a habit of being a presence is very smart with that, especially if you're going to be remote. And also, oh my goodness, treat your vendors good. I didn't really talk about this in my last session. Each one's a little bit different. So I'm happy to send you my last session if you want as well. The link, let me know, because I talk about a little bit different each time. But one of the things I tell my hosts I'm training and my clients is, like, make sure, like, anybody who's helping you, you know, your vendors, your housekeeping, your maintenance, your assistant, whoever it is, to just make sure to love on them, treat them like they're your partners, like partner with them in what you're doing, and it will be such a great partnership. They will enjoy doing things for you, and being able to work with you. And also being open-handed. You know, I'm very generous. I bonus when things are working out and I'm doing well. I bonus everybody, and I profit share, because it's just, I couldn't do it without the people who work with me and partner with me. And that when you're remote, that's huge for sure. Okay, and so this goes to what you were asking about, Allison. We talked a little bit about, oh no, this is the rules and regulations. This is a bit different, but this is your internal rules and regulations. So, excuse me. So it's really helpful to have in place some things. For example, would be age minimums. I highly recommend an age minimum of 25. And also, what's your maximum amount of guests? You know, how do you handle pets? You know, having these things very clearly lined out. And Clarice, this is really helpful for you if you're going to property manage. what's going to help you bring in clients to manage is having a really good set of rules and regulations that have been proven track record to work. I can help you with that if you'd like. You can consult however you want to do it, but having something that's been proven, whether that's you've purchased someone else's packet that you know works or whichever, it's good to have that, because then you can give your clients peace of mind by showing that these are the tools, these are the rules and things that actually will minimize damage, minimize confusion, make everybody stay a lot more comfortable. They know what to expect. Your housekeeping is going to be happy because they know what to expect, and everybody's respecting and honoring everything. And so that is something that has been a really key thing to why I believe I've been, that in prayer, why I've been so successful, because I was able to use the property management companies listing rules when I popped in. They said, yes, go ahead and use what we have when you make your listing. And that was big. Age minimum requirement. They actually would have people send copies of their driver's license. I haven't been doing that, but I do say in my listing that we might ask. So as I become, as I do more and more property management and get my booking site up, this was just for my property, but for other people's properties, I probably will do that. A lot of times also they will, and this is more on the property management side of things. You're going to want to make sure credit card names match up with the reservation. Often, I think Airbnb does that, but they may not. So, you're going to want to, make sure whoever's name is on the reservation is the name on the ID that you get, and things like that. And so that's kind of really important way to make sure you're not running into any issues as well. And so this is a whole topic in of itself. One of the things that we are going to put together, or are in the process of putting together. Did you have a question, Allison?
No. I was
Okay.
listening.
Okay. Yeah. It is kind of an Airbnb, etc. university where we have classes you can drop into or just take, or even a full curriculum for those who would like to have that, because there is a lot of stuff to learn, and I've been blessed to just learn myself, have other people that I've learned from, and people that I can even still kind of talk to right now. And so I'll probably definitely be bringing in all those resources to really develop a very robust curriculum so that anybody can do whatever they want to do within this. And I think just having the knowledge is always good, whether you choose to do yourself or you property manage. I think it's good to understand all aspects of it, because whatever you do decide to do, being knowledgeable and understanding it's going to help you make those decisions, help you hire the right company to represent you, help you know what's industry standard, help you know if that company is doing things the right way, right? And you'll know the questions to ask and things like that. And so they'll probably do even a whole thing on how to, interview or hire a management company, and how to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's something that's also helpful. Okay, so things to watch out for. So we've kind of, sort of been woven in and out of this. One of the things you want to be careful of is to make sure that your rules are clear. If I'll tell you, but put it to you this way, if you don't have age minimum requirements and you don't have a 2-day minimum, your chances of having somebody come in there and throw a party increases quite a bit. Usually the red flags I've heard from a lot of people say is most people who come in for a 1-day minimum, no age requirement, big, huge group of people that are coming are usually going to party in your house. So if that's something that you want to avoid, which I highly recommend avoiding, and I love a good party. I was a party planner as the best, but contained and controlled in the right environment. But in a residential community or an apartment complex, you're not going to want that, because you're going to have people shut down your Airbnb business essentially, or your short-term rental business, and you don't want that. So so it'd be good to having those things in place kind of helps to steer things in a more peaceful direction, right? Where you're at, how you're set up. So if your place is in the middle of a downtown party spot, then you don't want to necessarily encourage parties at your place, but you're going to have partiers at your place, then you probably want to have that age minimum that you have there, a minimum amount of days to stay there. And in your rules, very specific. We have quiet hours. We totally love the good party like anyone else. Party outside of the home. and then come back here to rest. This is a place of resting and peaceful and hanging out and, you know, having low conversations. And you can set that standard with how you set up your place as well as your rules. And usually people know that very clearly up front, and they're looking for a party place, they're not going to book your place. The other way also is don't price yourself too low. If it's too low, then you're also increasing likelihood of bringing people in who aren't going to take very good care of your place, or are going to complain, or are going to end up giving you a bad review. It's very interesting. I found the people who pay more per night honor your place a lot more. So there's that. Let me just check how we are on time and such. All right, we're good. So pros and cons, we've kind of talked about this as well. Honestly, I feel like the pros totally outweigh the cons. I feel like the cons usually come whenever, like the last slide, we don't have our regulations and things in place. Anything that I've struggled with has usually come, well, one, when I didn't listen to my instinct. Well, that guess, you're like, oh, that guess is already gonna be trouble. You know, when I don't listen to that, that tends to come back to me. But mostly if you love what you're doing and you love it, and you treat people how you would want to be treated, and you treat your place like how you would want to come into a place and find it, then people are going to really appreciate you. I have worked with people who are more like, I just want to make the money. I just want to make the money. And so they cut corners with their furniture, or they're very, I call it close-handed, right? Like with refunding and things like that. And that usually ends up inviting the element that doesn't work with that, right? I mean, there's a saying in the Bible, live by the sword, die by the sword. The way you do things will be what you bring in. And so if you're open-handed, and this is what I say from personal experience, I've been doing this for 3 years and I have seen this always work, but even when it gets hard, but as long as I'm open-handed, it always works out. I get the best guests every so often, like rarely. And I can't even say I've ever had a bad guest, honestly. Everybody's been great. Occasionally we've had, maybe twice recently, I had some damage. It was small damage, and they were very apologetic and sweet about it and willing to pay for it mostly. And that's, and like I said, that's recent after 3 years, but getting started, I was very blessed, like hardly anything. And I also am very easygoing. I recommend being easygoing, or if you're not going to do it yourself and you're hiring someone, make sure they are also easygoing, because you know, things happen. People are paying, especially if you have yourself priced well, right? And you allow pets. Like we allow pets at our properties. And accidents happen. I just ask them, let me know so we can fix it. I'm not going to charge you or overcharge you or any of that stuff. We have dogs, so I tell them, you know, we have children, things happen, so let us know. And then I'll say unreported things, but very rarely, you know, do I have to actually enforce any of that. And usually, like I said, I have it there for the structure, but I deal with it case by case. My cancellation policy is actually strict. I highly recommend a strict cancellation policy, because if you don't, you'll have people booking and canceling all the time. But I've had people have something coming up, and even if, whether they're honest or dishonest, I'm like, full refund, that's fine, you know, and it's always worked out. So, so I highly recommend that. It keeps your pros high and your cons low, whenever you really, you know, set those standards and you really are very easygoing and relaxed. Because I know some people are like, charge them for everything, and I'm just like, wait a minute, hold on. You know, I'll ask my housekeeping to charge me more, but I don't necessarily bother the guest, because the guest is paying a cleaning fee. They're paying a pretty good amount to stay there. And I mean, unless it's just a bunch of damage, and that's very rarely, like twice that's happened, I tend to just let it go, and it's worked out really well. So that's my style. Everybody's style is different. You might have your own style as you get going, but I think it is good to start somewhere with someone who's got some tools for success, and then you can, you know, organically move it around to what works for you. Okay, here we go. This is what you were asking about. So we talked about this a bit already, so I won't go too much more detail, but essentially you're going to want to just do your research and Google, you know, short-term rental, and taxes, and Airbnb takes care of the occupancy taxes, but if you're on somewhere else, and it'd be good to look to see what the city that where your place is, where your listing is, what their occupancy, hotel and occupancy taxes are. Like I said, Airbnb takes care of it, so that's great. If you start going outside of Airbnb, you might want to make sure what that platform covers. If you do your own booking site, then you're going to need to do all of it on your own. but there's still help for that, and I can totally help with that. And then the city regulations, that is what we were talking about before, you know, go to the city and the county sites for where your place is and look up zoning for short-term rentals, long-term, or short-term rentals, vacation rentals, nightly rentals, I mean, whatever term that they're using to see kind of what those regulations are. If you're in an apartment building or something like that, and you want to make sure you check with, or house even, check with an HOA, check with the condo or the apartment associations, wherever you're at, to make sure that they have it banned doing rentals less than 30 days minimum. And because a lot of people are trying to crack down on it because it's gotten so popular. And so some places don't allow it. They've gotten kind of ahead of it and banned it and voted to ban it. But double check that so you're not wasting your money buying or investing in a place where you can't even do it. But I mean, I've seen a lot of people with success. I mean, if they allow 30-day minimums, you can set up your Airbnb to have a 30-day minimum. So you're essentially doing monthly stays. And there's a lot of need for that because of everybody moving around or getting homes built or traveling for work or whatever it is they might have. So let's see here. So what's next? So we've kind of gone through a bit of a very high level overview of what it's like to run an Airbnb business or have it run for you through a property management company. And you kind of get to choose, I think, choosing your adventure, right? And we talked about this. Like, so one of the things that we do, what we try to do, because we see there's such a need for it, is, well, one, I help to consult with hosts, and I do that through the Airbnb platform, and that is actually complimentary. Like, that's free to you. Airbnb pays me to do that, and so that's an option. I think anybody can start at that option if that's what they want to do, and they think they may want to host one day. And what that means is I give you a referral link. You go in when you're ready, and you start listing your place under your own name, your own account. And I help you, like you ask me questions. They connect you with me on the portal. You ask me questions through the chat there. I can look at your listing and give you tips and show you what you can do. And then you publish it. And then I help you to get ready for your first guest. And once you've hosted your first guest, an Airbnb will pay me. And then you're off on your own. And that's kind of where, for a lot of the people that Airbnb sends me, that's kind of where we stop. A few people will say, hey, can I hire you to help me with these things? And so then we might connect a little bit more after they've hosted their first guest. And so here is, I call it the fully passive income. So this is your mailbox money retirement if you don't want to run your own place. So this is full service property management. If that's something that interests you, or if you want to do it yourself, an idea of what this could look like if you were doing it as well. And we'll quickly go through this. And if you want more information, we can get on a one-on-one call and I can talk to you more about what speaks to you or how I can help you personally with whatever it is you're wanting to do based on kind of the general information that we have here. My goal in this info session for everyone is that they have some basic information and tools so that they can figure out what do they want to know more about, whether that's everything or some things, and when do they want to know it and kind of in what order. And that's something you kind of get to choose. This is something that's more like, you know, consulting, coaching, like you kind of want to do it yourself, but you want somebody to come alongside with you and kind of help you when you have questions. And I find that this is probably would be helpful for a lot of people, especially when they want to do it themselves, because you have questions. I had someone like, what do you do when somebody wants to book your place for a full month? And I feel like if you don't know, ask. It's so important because you'll run into problems, and because that's not such an easy answer when someone wants to book with you for a full month if you're not used to it. And so you'll learn things the hard way, and they could cost you potential income if you don't have somebody that you can ask these questions to. Believe me, a good example is, for example, let's say someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to rent your place for a month in June, right? Well, the answer to that would probably be, well, you don't say no, because, you know, Airbnb, because then you have to kind of balance out with the rules of the platform, because, you know, there's superhost status, right? And so there's certain things you need to satisfy in order to get and keep superhost status. So declining people's offers will be a quick way to mess with your ratings and how you're listed and people are looking for you. So there's a way you answer that doesn't mess with your ratings and still kind of treats the person right. Now, for me, if somebody asked me that question, I'd say it costs, you know, $250 a night to stay here. And they'll usually say, we want to stay a month and they want a month discount. And what I tell them is I say, you're welcome to stay and I'll accept the request underneath the $250 a night. And I'll say that we don't do discounts, especially during our high season, because we are literally booked back to back to back. So for me to make, actually, I probably would say no, but for me to be able to say yes to this, right, then you would need to book this at the regular rates. And most people are not going to do that because, you know, they want a monthly rate. And that's a lot to stay at a place for a month, right? So I don't blame them. I wouldn't do it either. So, so then, you know, that would be a no there. They might want to look for a monthly rental that has more better monthly rental rates. It's like downtown Austin, you know, those places are going to be 500 plus a night. And so going there and doing a bulk stay is just not financially fiscal for them because they're going to make a whole lot, even just on a couple of nights stay. $500 a night. So that's an example of a question that could come up that you're not going to know the answer to right away. So my suggestion is anytime you have a question, have somebody you can ask. That could totally be me. We can figure that out so that you don't run into issues later. So that's kind of what that supports there. And then this is kind of where kind of a co-host situation where you're sort of setting up a property management, but you're still kind of part of it, expecting for yourself to get in on it and do it later. The positive part of this part is it really sets you up for success. You can essentially have me come in and I'm kind of your co-pilot, but I do everything. And you get kind of the good reviews, you get all the good stuff that comes from my work. And then you're paying me and then you're like, okay, I've got it. I'm ready to do it by myself. And I'm like, okay, awesome. Go ahead. And so that's kind of where this is. And this is something that I don't contract in. Like I don't do you're not stuck, right? You can work with me as long or as short as you need to. And as long with the 30-day notice, because that's kind of how we do our billing and everything like that. You can cancel. So that's kind of that example. It's kind of a co-hosting situation. The downside to that one, to let me say, is that it's hard for me to work with their various platforms because only Airbnb, as far as I know, has a co-host situation. So it gets a little more complex multi-platform. And my suggestion would be, if you want to maximize the amount of listings that you're getting, or excuse me, bookings, then you need a property management company is the way to go. If you're about, like, let me make the maximum amount of money, you're going to make more money. I'm just going to tell you that now. Even though you're paying them, you're going to make more money working with the property management company because they have tools that can make sure that you're getting the maximum amount for your place each night and booking the maximum amount of nights using the logistics and things like that. It's kind of like what hotels do. And then I have a bunch of a la carte. I love this stuff because it's very customizable. So like a lot of this is a lot of information, a lot more, you know, specific classes, documentation, right? So if you need rules, regulations, like this is what I would have done if it was available, getting these templates or even customizable things if I don't, because I didn't have time to make my guest book. I didn't have time to make my manual. I didn't have time. I mean, even though I have experience with contracting, I just didn't have the time to do it. And so had I had a reputable source that I could go to that already had these tested and true forms that have been working, I would have totally jumped on that. So we've put together a lot of different things. I have not only myself, but just also best practices of other companies and managers that I have worked with. And so we have all of that available kind of, you can call it kind of our e-store a bit, but a lot of it will be e-forms and things like that. And as well as as part of the university I was telling you that we're putting together. We'll probably start with the drop-in classes as we figure out what people are needing and wanting, and then creating a nice big curriculum for those who are wanting a more in-depth kind of learning interaction as they are, working with it, as well as, peer interactions with people who have questions. With that being said, I think that is it. So does anybody have any questions?
I'm driving. I'm sorry. But I really like the whole information. If you were to recommend any property manager, is that okay? That if you recommend someone or a company,
Yes.
since I don't know any. I know some because I think I work with some, but not. I mean, I don't know.
Well, yes, I mean, so we do property management. So
Okay.
you and I could have a property management conversation if you want to, like a conversation where I can
Yeah.
kind of tell you what I do and see if we're a good fit. Because I think it's good to find people you're a good fit. And if for whatever reason I'm not a good fit, then I can point you in the direction of some other ones too.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That was my only question at the end.
Yeah, that means I answered a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually reading a book of how to start an Airbnb. So I kind of have an idea, but I always wanted to hear more about it, more opinions, more, especially since you're a host, so you know more about it. So yeah.
I think that's brilliant. I think hearing everybody's perspectives is always really, really
Mhm.
good. But ultimately, it's just about jumping in. And so I would love to help you with that when you're ready to say, you know what, I'm ready to jump in. And it's going to be, I mean, most everybody I've talked to gets nervous. They're like, oh, I'm nervous. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Partner with somebody who can take it on with
Yeah.
you so until you build your confidence.
Yeah. Definitely. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Clarice, what about you? Any questions?
Just regarding the damages, like, do you still collect security deposit with your guests, or you let Airbnb?
That is a great question. So you do have the option through the Airbnb platform to collect a security deposit. I
Mm-hmm.
personally don't, but you can. And in my experience, me personally, if I did ever need to collect anything, the guest usually is if I handle it right, the guest actually pretty much for me 100% of the time pays. I have not had anybody not pay. Um, uh, but if they don't, you can go through
The air
Airbnb.
cover?
Say it again.
The air cover?
Yes, you can. Yes, and they have a
Okay.
way that you can submit a claim through their platform to get a claim. Now, depending on the situation, you may consider doing a security deposit. For me, at this point, with my own properties, like I said, a lot of it was for me testing it out myself and talking to other people when I got started, and a lot of them didn't through the platform. But those property management companies that had their own booking sites, a lot of them do collect a security deposit. So, but they didn't. It's interesting. They collected the security deposit through their booking platform, but they didn't through Airbnb. And this was what I've seen, over the course of actually, I don't think I've ever seen as a guest. I don't think I've ever had
Mm-hmm.
a one that collected security deposit. Um, and
Okay.
I've stayed at a lot of places and been through a lot of them. So it's very rare. I've not actually seen it. But they may do that because it's so expensive for the guest on their end because they're paying almost 20% in Airbnb fees and then also all the taxes and fees. So it ends up being quite a bit for them if you ever look on the other side. So definitely put it in your agreements and things like that, how you handle collecting damages and things like that. Make sure that because as soon as they book with you, it says that you've agreed to any of their rental agreements. And so just make sure you're very clear. And I even put it in my check-in details where I say
Okay.
what I collect if complaints happen or what happens if this stuff happens so that they understand.
All right. Okay. And then one more question.
Mhm.
For long-term booking, do you give them like free cleaning or just one-time cleaning?
That is a good question. So with long term, I have not actually had a long term booking, but I have consulted on this before.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation to people is to plan on doing intermittent cleanings and roll that into the cost. I would make sure the guest is okay with it. They should be, especially if they go into
Okay.
it knowing that. But yes, I would like a hotel refresh, right? I would, maybe do a cleaning once every week or two. Um, just one to make sure you're getting eyes on the place, and two to make sure that when they check out, there's not a whole lot of work that's going to need to get done.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I
So yeah, but then I have to pay for the cleaning,
No,
for
no.
the extra cleaning.
I want to say, unless I'm wrong, I want to say that they have now. I'll have to look because I've not used it, but I think on the booking you can
Mm-hmm.
create a charge like that, I believe. And even if you cannot directly, I know you can roll it in as an extra cost, as an extra fee, right? So let's say, you know, they've said to book with you and you've made sure they understand that, you know, for long-term stays, you probably want to have it in your writing even before they ask, right? For long-term stays, we require to come and refresh your place up, you know, every couple of weeks or however long you want to do it. And that's going to be this amount each time. So make sure you know
Okay,
that
got it.
before you book this place. And then if they agree to it, and this is how I used to do pet fees before the pet fee was included, because it didn't used to be on Airbnb, then I would submit an extra request of money through their platform for those costs.
All right.
I do know owners that they, when they do have long term, whenever it's like 3 months or 6 months, I think they don't require, but they recommend the guests like, hey, you know, like a light cleaning, not like a
Mm-hmm.
full price, right? But like light
Mm-hmm.
cleaning, and since they're
Mm-hmm.
staying more time,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's hard for the cleaners to someone be there for 6 months and not cleaning at all.
Yep.
So
Oh my
I
God.
think, yeah, and we have had some issues and where
Mm-hmm.
we find the place a mess, but because they don't recommend it. So I think it's a good way to, you know, hey, if you're gonna stay long, you know,
Mm-hmm.
be
Do
sure
you
to
provide the linens and all, or the owners provide the linens?
As a property, that's a great question. As a property management company, right now, the owners do it, but I'm in process
Yeah.
of setting up something. Once I get enough properties, I would like to be able to provide it as a monthly service, but it would be the linens and like the washing and laundering of them. Because one of the issues you have is like we do white, right? Everything white, like a hotel. And when they're
Mm-hmm.
staying or things like that happen, you're usually kind of having to change them. Now, if I find a place like a hotel does, get them in bulk, I set up my laundry service that's got it down, right? It's almost like a diapering service, right? I set up my because the diaper companies provide the diaper equipment and the diaper stuff too, right? And you just pay for whatever plan you want. And then based on that plan, they come and pick up the dirties, they bring you the cleans, and then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then your housekeeping, your stager, you know, puts everything out. So as a company, I would like to one day do that. But the way I do it now is I ask the owners to have like minimum 2 to 3 sets of everything.
Okay.
And so if your place can take 20 people, for example, then we're gonna need to stock up on towels.
Okay, last question. What about from your experience, what do usually guests look for? Like, okay, for example, towels, shampoo, conditioner. Do you also provide them oil, salt, and pepper? You know, some kind of
Yes,
basic
yes.
needs.
We'll do like so we'll do cooking things. So I do provide light
Mm-hmm.
spices. I also provide a huge coffee setup. Like I give them, I get Keurig. I have a 12 cup, like a you know the drip coffee. I
Mm-hmm.
have coffee beans in a grinder that you press it and it does it and you pour it in the machine. Filters, everything they need to make their coffee. I have milks, the little milks and sugars and the little, I think we used to have little stirs in there as well. I have a tea kettle and tea bags. I used to have a French press there, but you don't have to do all that. But yes,
And
people always
you
ask about
you
coffee.
pay you pay for it, or you let the guests pay for it?
No, we provide that as an amenity.
You
So
okay.
and so when you're setting your prices, think about that. Because people will pay, you know, if you're providing that kind of experience. So like we have robes in the bathroom, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have fancy like body wash, and we have I think one of them I put some individual soaps they can take home with them that smell really good from a local soap maker. Um, and um, and we use like the palm oil, so salon grade shampoos and conditioners in
Okay.
there that they can use. Now we buy it in bulk, so it's not the little bottles. We have a bulk, and then they can use it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a pump on it, and that works really well. Um, We haven't even provide a basket that has like a couple of popcorns and some snacks in it.
Oh,
If for water, if you don't have, if your water there is not super drinkable, and I say they're like, for example, by the lake in one of our places, we don't really trust it too much. And so instead of doing the bottled waters, which get expensive, we put a Brita or a water filter pitcher in the fridge so they can have filtered water that's purified and cold.
all
So these
right.
are ways that we kind of have little things, because like some refrigerators will have a dispenser with it, but if it doesn't, then we put a pitcher in there with the filter, the filtering in there in the fridge.
Got it. That's
So,
all. Thank
I
you.
highly recommend. But what I was going to say for you, since you're in a different area, you might look and see what other neighboring Airbnbs are offering, because each place is a little bit different. Because I've heard like one place will charge for pool heating, like we don't do that here, right? In Florida, I've heard. And some other countries, charge specifically for certain things. So I would probably go as a guest. So like go to Airbnb and search as a guest in the area where you think you might be hosting or managing places, and see like what are they charging, what are the fees, and then look at the
Oh,
pictures, what are they offering, what are their amenities.
actually, from my experience, cleaning companies, like every towels, like they cost, we have to pay for every towels and all. So they only provide like, if the apartment is 1 bedroom, they only provide two towels. That's it.
For how many people? For
For
two
two
people?
person as well.
Okay.
Yeah, for
And that's
people.
pretty, I mean, that's reasonable depending on how long they're staying. I know here, and it's about expectation too, right? I have seen people get bad reviews here because of not enough towels, but that might not be the expectation somewhere else.
Yeah, but then I want to like, be more like next level cleaning
Exactly.
services.
So
Yeah.
if you're providing abundance of towels and that's huge in your area, then that's going to definitely set you apart. And who charges? You said the cleaning service charges for the towels?
So okay, the guests pay for the cleaning services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they request for an extra towels, sometimes they argue with like why do we need to pay another towels and all. So I
Okay.
have to, I have to do it, like I have to pay for it.
I got you. I see. Based on how you
Mhm.
people that you're managing or the place that you're
Yeah.
working at. Okay, but when you're running things, then you can kind of, suggest to your clients and say, hey, let's charge a little bit more for our place, but let's give them an abundance of towels
Yes.
to balance that out, right? Because that will set you apart, because people like towels. Like when you go to a hotel, that's the big thing, like towels
Yes,
everywhere.
yes. Cleaning and towels, that's it.
Hmm. That's huge. And so I think when you have that available, it definitely makes people feel comfortable. So that's super
Yeah.
important. Great question.
So yeah, that's all for me.
Okay. Well, then I am so glad you ladies joined me today. We'll be doing these. I mean, it'll pretty much be, very similar information, but feel free to jump in. Let me know if you want to come to the next one. Let me know if you want any of the recorded sessions, the links to them. And then also if you want to have a one-on-one and go a little bit deeper on whatever you want to go deeper on, send me a message. Let me actually put in this chat here my email, so you have it. Here, let's see here. You have my email. And okay. Yes. So feel free to email me with whatever you need, however I can help or serve you. Whether that's, one-on-one, or the link to this one, or the recording, or anything. So stay in touch so I can do whatever it is I can and share whatever I can with you guys. I'm so glad to meet you both. Hopefully I'll be seeing you too some point in the future in person.
Yes.
But
Yes. Thank you so much.
yes, you're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will
You
hopefully
too.
talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
You
Bye.